I got to a point where, I actually enjoy this. And it was really good. And that's when I started, looking for an actual chef job, and then I started working at different restaurants and learning different cuisines. And I got really interested in it. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's not just about one type of cuisine and what there is to learn. There's so many techniques to different places. So, yeah.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Traditionally, clubs have been better known for a budget feed than culinary excellence, but they've become a real hub of the community for so many Australians. But things have changed in clubland as operators see value in exceptional food offerings to woo in clientele. What's the balance needed to run a restaurant within a club setting? Jason Chan is the chef and owner of Canton Kitchen. Jason, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Anthony?
I'm good. It's good to get you on the show. You're kind of leading the way and carving a new path in sort of clubland in Australia. What's it been like?
It's a little bit different. I think being in a club and being a standalone restaurant, I think you got to cater a little bit differently. I think clubs got their expectations of what food needs to come out, pricing, and basically, working together. So.
Has it been hard striking that balance? You've got a rich history in some amazing restaurants, which you can get into, but getting that balance of pushing the boundaries, but keeping the club and the clientele happy too. Yeah,
it's really hard. Look, what we used to do in restaurants before I was in clubs were totally different. I mean, pushing boundaries, when I first started in clubs, it was always like a fight between customers, because they're not used to this type of food. I think the expectation at clubs, I think they were more in a bit more old school. And then introducing different types of cuisine and like you say, pushing boundaries of instead of doing a classic sweet and sour pork, you do something different. People are like, oh, is this the same thing that I used to eat 10 years ago at a club?
Well, I want to explore what you are doing there and the incredible success that you're having with the business model that you've created. But take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family growing up?
Very important. My mum and dad, they used to own restaurants, and being born and raised in the kitchen, I think there was expectation of me following the footsteps of my dad. But, I was young then, never wanted to cook, didn't like cooking at all. The long hours inside the kitchen, it was like, no way, I'm not doing this at all. But I think, look, I don't know, I think it's just, it's a lot different now, yeah.
Well, to take us back to when you were young, what sort of food or feasts do you remember that you can share with us that sort of exemplify sort of you growing up?
I think seafood. A lot of Asian restaurants, they've got a lot of fish tanks. That's what my dad had. And being around that, it was always like, Dad, when am I ever going to eat the lobster? Knowing it's an expensive dish at an Asian restaurant, it was always like, Dad, when am I going to eat the lobster? When am I going to eat the crab? But yeah, I think it was all seafood. And I think growing up on, sweet and sour pork, Mongolian lamb, beef and black bean, all that, I think, yeah, that's where it all started.
Knowing what you know now, sort of running restaurants and being in the hospitality sector, how do you look back at the time of seeing your parents doing it when you were a kid? Are the worlds a lot different?
Yeah, it is, 100%. I think back then, compared to now, I think it's a bit easier now. Back then, it was more like, you own the restaurant, you'd have to be there for the 7 days, 15, 16 hours, not seeing my dad for most of the time. That's why I never wanted to be a chef. And then when you think about it now, people or chefs and these days are like, oh, I only want to do my 40 hours or 45 hours a week. So yeah, it is a lot different. It is.
You mentioned that you never really wanted to be a chef, but what turned the corner for you? What sort of flicked the switch on and made you head down the path of a chef?
I think it was more when I started doing it, when I was in the kitchen, it's more like it was more stress relief for me. When I walk into a kitchen, all I would concentrate on is cooking for the customer. Nothing else would go into my head. Nothing could how to use the word, could annoy me or anything. It was more focus. It was plain, I'm going to make the best, let's say a fried rice to this customer, and what am I going to put into it? So it was more about concentration, and I think it was about stress relief.
Did you work in the kitchens of your parents, and do you have any stories of what that was like?
Yeah, I did. I did.
That you want to go on record for?
Like every Saturday and Sundays, I would help my parents out at their restaurants. And yeah, like it's hard when you see them do the hours and me working in there. How do I say it? Like, it's any stories? Yeah, I used to steal a lot of food to eat while I was working. Like, I'll be in a corner, I'll be doing my homework there as well. My dad would say, Jason, sit in the corner, don't move. But all your chefs would be like, man, you're so slack. You should let your son eat. Let him do something, Yeah, I'd be stealing prawn crackers the whole time, trying to eat. That was the best thing.
Well, what were your first steps into a career as a chef in a commercial kitchen, sort of outside the family?
I started doing part-time at one of my friend's restaurants. And look, back then everything was about, money. But I think, like I said, I got to a point where, I actually enjoy this. And it was really good. And that's when I started, looking for an actual chef job, and then I started working at different restaurants and learning different cuisines. And I got really interested in it. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's not just about one type of cuisine and what there is to learn. There's so many techniques to different places. So, yeah.
What were in the early days, what were some of the really important people or venues that you worked at as you started to build your career?
I worked at this restaurant in Neutral Bay, and that was my first ever restaurant that I worked in. It was a Vietnamese Thai. This lady, family-owned restaurant, she taught me how to use the woks, and I was like, wow, this is what my dad used to do. And I was like, man, someone's actually teaching me how to use the wok. So I think that's where it all started, working for this little Thai restaurant, and going on from there, and then obviously slowly learning more techniques and finding other restaurants where I can learn more. And yeah, that's when I started, looking for restaurants, and then I started working at other ones.
You've worked at some pretty great restaurants. What's been the real highlights for you that helped carve your path?
I think being the opening team of some of the restaurants and getting one hat for them. So I think that was one of the career highlights. Never expected to get a hat. It's very prestige, and to be able to do that, it was amazing. It was one of my dreams. Being a chef is all about creating food, but also making sure we get all these hopefully prestige accolades.
Well, tell us about those restaurants. You've worked at like Queen Chow and Super Normal, and take us into those kitchens. What were they like?
Super Normal. That's where Super Normal was great. Really big restaurant. 600 packs for dinner. Getting pumped every night. But I think it was worth it at the end of the day. Being mentored and learning, and being able to be part of the opening team to get a hat with that, amazing. Queen Chow and more with Merivale, that they taught me a lot, how to run a business, and that place was a beast as well. But like I said, being the head chef there and being part of the team to open and get a hat, it was amazing. It's everything.
Take us into that the kitchen at Queen Chow. It was a big move by Merivale into Enmore with the renovation of that pub. Tell us about the menu and what it was like for you, what you created.
Menu. Look, we had all the executive chefs and all that. We all sat on board to I think put in all our experiences where we went overseas to bring in all the cuisines. And it was great being able to sit down with them and being obviously from Hong Kong and my heritage is Cantonese, and Queen Chow being a Cantonese restaurant, it was great to bring in some old school type of food and modernizing it and being able to serve it in Enmore, which we know is, quite a nice area.
Was there a dish on the menu that you created there in your time at Queen Chow that sort of epitomised sort of what you were doing?
Yeah, I think silken tofu. It was actually a cold dish that we put on the menu, and look, not many people eat cold tofu, and to make it tasty and all that stuff, we went through a lot of changes, and I think it's still on the menu now, and I think it's probably one of the best sellers still.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
The things that we're really looking for in plums, first of all, they've got to be sweet. We're really looking for a full flavour explosion in our plums. Red flesh is critically important to us, higher in antioxidants, so all that good stuff. And then we're also looking to add a slightly firmer texture, so there's almost a little crunch. That's the real driver for us.
For more information, go to montague.com.au.
How did the gig with Canton Kitchen and this relationship with the club come about?
We opened our first Canton Kitchen in Castle Craig, and we were approached by the club looking for operators to come in. And then I thought, why not? It's, we're in a club, it's guaranteed foot traffic, why not explore that and try and change the way Asian food are in clubs. So yeah, that's where it all started.
Take us back to the original restaurant where it sort of spawned from. What was that like, and why did you settle on that sort of area in the north of Sydney?
Look, I wanted to explore. Back in my head, I always think, when you're in Castle Craig, a rich area, which I think it is, it's good to try this type of cuisine, because knowing Castle Craig, New Chatswood, I don't think they had anything similar to that. And I wanted to test the market to see how it went with the food. And obviously coming from, bigger restaurants and all that stuff, I try to use that to my advantage. But yeah.
Take us into Clubland and tell us a little bit about the restaurant that you have.
Clubland, Canton Kitchen, Bankstown. We've had our struggles. When we first opened there, it was COVID, the really start of COVID, and we were open for 2 months. It was amazing because the first 2 months, I was like, wow, this is a club for you. It's guaranteed foot traffic and the sales are great. Then COVID kicked in and we shut for 6 months. But there was a lot of support from the club. So yeah, basically.
Tell us a little bit about the menu that you have there. Is there a couple of dishes you can tell us about and that are quite popular on the menu?
Oh, and the club. I think our grilled beetle leaf scallop, that one's very popular. Our crispy master stuffed pork belly with apple, chili and mint, one of our signature dishes there. That one, I think we came, second or third in one of those club awards. So that was great. I think that's it. That's basically it. Those two are probably one of our signatures. Black pepper beef is always a crowd favourite, and our roast duck, Peking duck pancakes. That's a big seller there.
Take us through some of those cooking processes. How do you get the best sort of roast Peking duck or black pepper steak?
Oh, Peking duck. I might get a lot of hate if I say this, but everyone's got their own techniques. I think our one is just we try to use the traditional technique flavoring. We would marinate it for 24 hours. We would give it a nice bath, and then we'll maltose it with red vinegar to make sure that the skin is dry and crispy. We'll dry it for about another 3-4 days. And then we'll sew the duck up so all the flavouring stays inside the cavities. But yeah, I think that's our way of doing it. There's a lot of other ways, and I don't want to offend anybody, but this is the way we were taught, especially for my dad being obviously a traditional Chinese Cantonese chef. These are some of his ways of making sure that the ducks are nice and still got that traditional flavour to it.
as you've been trying to strike that balance between sort of pushing the envelope and pleasing the punters there, what sort of reactions have you got? Has there been some good stories of the connections that you've made with the guests and the offering?
Oh, definitely. Like, I mean, when we first started, there was a lot of people that didn't like our food and saying that this is not Chinese food, this is not Cantonese food. And I would tell the customers, look, yes, my menu doesn't say it's Cantonese food, but we're trying to introduce you guys and educate that not all Cantonese or Chinese food has to be bad. It doesn't have to be oily. It doesn't have to be, your cheap cut of meat. But I think introducing all the different cuts of meat to them, pushing the boundaries with their taste buds, I think it's gone a lot better after 3 years being in the club. A lot of people have accepted us and saying that, well, we've never tried this sweet and sour pork before. It's so different to the way that we used to have it. Like, you would go to old school Chinese and they would go, oh, the sweet and sour sauce is very runny and red, and it's made with, vinegar, sugar, and stuffed tomato sauce. But the ones that we make, it takes us 2-3 hours to make, and it's just a little bit different.
The last couple of years have been pretty challenging, and as you mentioned, you opened in the throes of COVID. What sort of impact has that upheaval had on you? Do you approach your career and the art of hospitality a bit differently as a result?
We have. We tried to adapt and change the business structure of it, but look, people say, COVID, it's a blessing in disguise. It has changed a lot, but I think it's also educated a lot of people in regards to how a restaurant is run, how it's set up, and I think a lot of customers do appreciate the food more because they understand that look what's happened to the industry, and I think they're a bit more polite and a bit more to staff as well. I think in that sense.
How has the last couple of years changed you and this move into clubs compared to the restaurants that you were familiar with?
I think stability. The club gives us more stability. There's a lot more support. And because you're not standing alone on the street, it's a guaranteed customer base because the club has its own members that come in and out. I think it's the stability of being in a club now. So like if I was ever asked to open a restaurant outside a club, I think I would think twice. But if I got offers to open inside a club, it would be a definite yes for me now.
Wow. You mentioned the memories that you have of seafood when you were younger and the yearning to have the lobster from the tank. Does seafood feature on your menu?
Yes, we do. We've got 4 live fish tanks at the back of our restaurant. Yeah, we've got lobster, king crab, mud crab, abalones, you name it, we've got it. Coral chowds, pippies, everything.
And what's the success of that? Because, clubs are considered or have been considered sort of budget meals, but, what we're talking about here is anything but.
Yeah, we tell them it's affordable eats now. We still get a lot of customers that request for live seafood. And look, at the end of the day, live seafood doesn't have to be expensive. Everything can be affordable. It's how we introduce it to the customers.
Live seafood is extraordinary offering, but what's the challenge for the chef in that environment? Like, how do you keep the product at its optimum, and what's the handling that you have in the kitchen to make sure that the dish is perfect?
So we've got one chef in the kitchen that all he does is the live seafood, so that's his specialty. Yeah, we do. He looks after the fish tanks, and we get our fish tanks cleaned and serviced like every 2 weeks. So obviously, so he maintains the integrity of the seafood. It's usually one guy that does it all. So he knows what's best and how to actually clean and gut the seafood. So yeah.
We're doing amazing things in Clubland. What do you love about what you do?
I think feeding the customers and getting good feedback. I think once when we first opened at the club and, we had a lot of, I should say, bad reviews and people saying that, this is not the food that they came here for. But after I think a couple of months into it, we continued doing what we were doing. This little kid left a note on the table, and I've still got it on my phone. I took a photo of it, and she actually put on the note that this is the best food she's ever had, and she said, "Keep up with the good work." Yeah, so it was pretty amazing, and I think from that point, I was like, you know what, it's worth it. Like, everything is worth it, what you do. Yeah.
That's a beautiful story, Jason. It's been an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear a part of your story. Good luck in the next year, and please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Well, thank you for having me today. Thank you.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.